Hello again. Welcome to another edition of CropLife Retail Week. I'm Eric Sfiligoj, editor of CropLife and CropLife Iron magazines, here with another tale from my co-road warrior, Lara Sowinski. Lara, welcome back to the program and good to see you again.
Thank you. Glad to be home, despite the little hiccup going to and from Kansas City.
Yeah, I know. I remember last week when we were in Kansas City together and you were telling me how close your flight time was to when our end time was for the event. And I remember teasing you, saying you were never going to make it. And then, of course, later that day, to my horror, I discovered, oh, you didn't make it. So I feel like I may have pre-cursed you, and I apologize profusely for that. I didn't mean that. I really didn't.
No, that's okay. Got a chance to have some Kansas City barbecue, so all things considered, it worked out.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess there are worse cities to be stuck in. I remember one time I got stuck overnight in Detroit. The less said about that, the better.
So all good, huh?
Anyhow, yes, and to anybody in Detroit who may be watching, I apologize, but I'm sorry, your city closes weekdays at 5 o'clock. So there's just really no place to go, unfortunately. Of course, this was before the MGM was there. So maybe it's a little more vibrant now, but that was back in the 80s. Not the best, but anyhow, back to the topic of hand. So yes, as we said, we were both in Kansas City last week. We were at the first annual PACE Executive Forum with a lot of key industry folks for ag retailers and a couple of suppliers and association people. And I know the feedback I got from folks at the event is they really liked the content, and particularly they loved the networking opportunities. Obviously, that's something that you can get on a Zoom call and talk to someone about a topic, but sharing a couple of drinks or hors d'oeuvre at night, you can dive into new, different conversations, maybe take things in a different direction, and that in-person experience you just cannot get anywhere but in person. So it was good to see all those people again, of course.
It was, and for me, first time meeting most of them, particularly our advisory council members. And it was great, very a learning experience for me, a lot of topics that were candidly discussed and teased out some angles that I had never considered before. So for me as well, I'm sure as the attendees and the speakers, the feedback, as you mentioned, a lot of good feedback. And I think the size of the conference itself was small enough to give it an intimate feeling. People were comfortable, a lot of interaction between those in the audience and the panelists and speakers, which was great. I really liked that part. That was one of the best parts for me, actually.
Yeah, and as I did promise in our video last week, because we recorded our video just before the event took place, I did take some video clips of some of our speakers. The first clip I have to share with you is from our friend Amy Winstead, who from Greenpoint Ag, who was one of what we were calling the pillar leader for us in our second pillar of the event, which was looking at the changing agribusiness climate. And of course, Amy, in her presentation opening off that pillar, talked a little bit about, how the changes in agriculture are things that everyone has learned to adapt to. And of course, she mentioned a little bit about the effort with sustainability. So here is that clip.
But when I thought about ag, man, we are a lot like rocket ships taking off right now. There is a ton of pre-planning that goes into what we do, right? If you think about prescription for fertility, variety placement, what crops are we even going to plant? There's a lot of pre-work that goes into that. But there's always last minute changes. We're always making final tweaks. We think we have a crop plan in place. All of a sudden, the grower calls and it changes on the fly. So we have a lot of planning that goes in. We also move really fast, right? When the grower calls and he says it's time to go, it's time to go. And there are so many outside factors at play between weather, supply, labor influences. There are a lot of things today that are completely out of our control. And we also collect massive amounts of data to make decisions, to know how we best want to move in our market. And if you want to ask the project of Artemis, we still sometimes fail at takeoff. right? And we do that a lot in agriculture.
So that's what Amy Winstead had to say about a little bit about the ag and sustainability. But then Amy actually then a little later after her presentation, she was the moderator on a panel discussion. We had 3 ag retailers up on stage, and this is another Amy, an Amy Asmus from Asmus Farm Supply. And the topic, of course, was sustainability. And Amy was making the point that not all of the growers, of course, are on board with that, and others have been doing it for years and years and years and are wondering why they don't get recognition for the effort right now. But this is what Amy Asmus had to say. So don't get the Amy's confused. We had 2 of them going on stage. It was really fun. But here's what Amy Asmus was saying.
Yeah, sustainability is a big part. A lot of times when we go to our growers and start talking about sustainability, they say, well, I've been doing this forever. Don't I get credit for what I've been doing forever? So in order to take some of the technology and the wide variety of technology that's really been introduced in the last few years, we had to look within ourselves first. And we spend a lot of time looking at our customers. We segment our customers and say, what are they ready for? What are they not ready for? How are we going to approach them? How are we not going to approach them? Because, everybody says, how can we get all of our customers to adopt sustainability practices? And I'm here to tell you, boots on the ground, you're not going to get everybody. Some people aren't ready. So what we've done is we've looked at our customers and we've really segmented them. And then we've talked to our guys on how to talk to those growers and which growers are ready. Unfortunately, it's been painted a pretty rosy picture of who gets to play in the sustainability world and who gets paid to play in the sustainability world. And my customer base are customers that have their own equipment, do their own applications. The only custom application we do is seed treatment. And so they're very innovative, they're very collaborative, they're very forward thinking, they're very independent. And what we find is a lot of them have already adopted some of these practices when they first come out. And so our challenges they're hearing out in the world, well, we'll pay you for carbon if you start cover crops. Well, I've been using cover crops for 10 years. I'll pay you for carbon if you start reduced tillage. Well, we've had reduced till systems for a long time. So when Amy put up her upside down pyramid and only 2 people got paid for that program, we'd be lucky to get 2. And so we have to talk on sustainability at a different level than the middle tier of adopters, because a lot of my customers are on the front tier. So we're looking at programs individually, we're looking at customers individually, we're trying to figure out how do we give them the best tools in their toolbox in order to show the data that they have and show whether or not they actually qualify for some of the pay-to-play sustainability programs.
So again, the Amy's between the 2 of them made the point that they went out to over 20,000 grower customers and asked them about participating in the sustainability program, a carbon credit initiative, and in the end, there were only 2 people that bit on that offer. So again, a lot of work to do on this front, unfortunately. So then the second day of our session, we had another pillar lead. That was Doug Gott from Wilbur Ellis, and Doug was leading the panel discussion on the next generation of agriculture, looking at the retailer of the future and some of the ag technologies that are coming into the marketplace. And here's the clip of Doug talking about desirability and availability of automation, and also the role data collection may play with ag retailers going forward.
Massive, very expensive machine. And the owner was explaining to us, he's like, we would have never been able to afford this but we can't afford to pay people to do it anymore. This was 5 years ago. And we were like, well, why now? And he said, well, the cost of it has come down because Europe has been dealing with this for 20 years. So they've actually paved the way for us domestically to be able to afford some of this automation just because they have not been able to afford labor for 20 years. So anyway, it was just kind of an eye-opening experience for me to see the transformation that's occurring. And obviously we're seeing more and more of that, and there's a lot more investment in the automation across the supply chain. We'll go into that in the investment side. The intensity of data collection, obviously, you know, the discussion yesterday around sustainability and that the carbon market, I mean, that's just accelerating the need for us to collect data. There was a study done years ago about collection points on a farm, and you know, if you were to take today's current state, there may be like, I think it was like 50,000 data points that can be generated at any given time on a farm. And they're suggesting by like 2035, there's gonna be like 5 million data points. So it's everything that farmers are running through their fields and all the equipment and tools and things that are being utilized are all collecting data. And so this is just gonna accelerate over time. The changing of the business models, players looking up and downstream. So new distribution approaches, the digitally enabled, we've got several in the marketplace. Several of them have probably, for other retailers in the room, has forced us to change our business tactics and our approaches to our customers digitally, right? Offering them that omni-channel approach, right?
So that's what Doug had to say on that topic. And then, of course, we had a panel discussion. Our friend from Purdue University, Asa Good, was the moderator on that. And she had up on stage with her Kevin Krieg from Untitled Chapter and Ben Kraker from Ag Gateway. And the three of them talked about the importance of ag technology and adoption, and looking at the soil is with a starting point for a lot of the decisions made on the farm. So here are a couple of comments from those folks in their panel discussion.
To help offset some of those pains and help increase the gains throughout that process. So when we started talking about kind of the path that we were going to take, this picture, I found it on LinkedIn, I don't know, a while ago, and I think it really simplifies where things are for ag retail, for the customer, but at the end of the day, I think my favorite part is we've heard it for 2 days. You gotta come back to the story. And so what does that mean? Because there is a lot of data. There are ways to sort it. We can get it arranged in different data lakes and warehouses, and we can present it really pretty. But at the end of the day, it's how do we make it consumable so that it has an impact in decision making. So I guess one of the things that our description of our session talked about is, where the grower's headed in terms of thinking about just technology, interoperability of all of these pieces. I wanted to start with your perspectives on where growers are today and how fast they're changing when it comes to technology and data. What do you guys think?
All right. So I think some of the stuff we've discussed before, where growers they like to adopt technology that's easy. Right? Some of the results from the survey, we look at adoption of things like guidance, where that's like a hockey stick. It made sense. It made everybody's lives easier. You don't have to do any pre-work, really. You just bolt that thing on and you're ready to go. When it gets to the data piece, this diagram I think really shows it well, and that's where I think we've seen a little bit slower adoption with the software and things like Doug was showing, that you really gotta have a plan. You gotta collect the data, you make sure you collect it right, and then currently, there's a lot of hoops that we've talked about that you gotta jump through to get it from one system to another. And I think that's where we're starting to get some of that sorted out. Data's starting to move a little bit easier. We've got a lot of different things going on with Ag Gateway helping with that. And I think that'll help bring it along where, farmers are getting more professional and more business-like. The autonomy I think that we see coming is going to drive that a lot. It's not going to be, okay, I wake up in the morning and I decide to go to this field, and you call up the hired man, and he goes and does it. You're gonna have to have a plan laid out, you're gonna have to have a field boundary. You can't just drop the autonomous machine off in the field and expect it's gonna know what to do. So I think a lot of those dynamics are gonna start pushing farmers to plan a little bit differently, and you know, even the supply chain stuff looking forward more. It's probably gonna start accelerating some of that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to that, I mean, I think and Doug, you hit on it with the next generation coming back, right? They are looking for technology, right? And even some of the established farmers are looking to bring technology and attract that next generation back to the farm as well. And one of the things that we're seeing is across farmers, they're not going to dedicate a lot of time sitting down to these things and really diving in deep. So what can you serve up to them in what we call like a micro moment, right? Just so they have a little bit of time between doing something or other, right? When can they just pick up that phone, and really we're trying to position it as, instead of going to Instagram or TikTok now with a lot of them, right? How can they pick up an app that can add value to their farm, right, in that amount of time? So I think we got to kind of really focus on that, and how to get all the noise kind of cleared away, and give them some very specific things in a couple of minutes that they can do to be able to make a difference and have that in their farm. So I think that's one of the ways I see the future going, and how technology can help enable that mindset of, the attention span just maybe isn't there, but yet I still got to get value and deliver value back to the farm as well.
So there you have it, Miss Laura, a couple of the video highlights from our PACE Executive Forum. We will probably share more with you in coming weeks. But again, these were some really, really interesting topics. I know there was a lot of discussion back and forth with the audience, and of course, Amy Winstead was my favorite with her panel discussion, because I know I had helped her put together about a half dozen questions to ask her panelists, and she basically asked the first question, and then the back and forth with the audience took up the rest of the 50-minute time frame that they actually had to play with. So I guess that's always a good thing when one question motivates that much discussion.
It is. In fact, I wanted to, now that we got to take a look at some of those clips that you just shared, the presentation that Amy Winstead started off with, she mentioned something to the effect, I had it in my notes, that, all these years we thought it all begins with the seed. And in fact, now that we've been able to get more insight into what's really happening and ag tech tools, et cetera, it really does start with soil health. So that's the foundational part of things, which was a big shift from looking at the seed as the starting point to now looking at soil health. I had that in my notes. I wanted to mention the panel with Amy Asmus, Matt, and Jeff, as you mentioned, the three ag retailers on the panel. One thing that stood out for me, it was a playful, kind of little nipping back and forth, if you will, but the consensus was, and it was really great, they all nodded in agreement that, hey, ag retailers ultimately have to work together. The problems that we're confronting as an industry really require collaboration, less competition in terms of dealing with these problems. That's one thing that stood out for me. Panel that Doug moderated with Alexander and Craig were his two panelists. Alexander brought the angle of the people part of it, understanding people, what their role is in conjunction with ag tech. All the good ag tech tools in the world don't amount to much if there's not a willingness for people to kind of change that mindset and adopt things. Asa, Kevin, and Ben, really a lot of good conversation as well, kind of looking at the new generation and the changing ag space, not only in terms of labor and the young students and young folk that are entering into the profession, but also the influence of the consumers, the changing demands from consumers and how that's impacting. So just wanted to share those as well. I have to say it was a success in terms of we were able to bring together not only the core ag folks, but those folks in supply chain and risk and finance even that kind of shed even more light on what's happening in the space and how we all need to work collectively to deal with it. And had a fantastic 2.5 days there. So really a success in my book.
Yes, I agree. And again, for folks who could not make it in person, again, if you check out our website, you can see some of the last names for the folks we've been talking about who are on these panels. And I'm sure, like I say, in the coming weeks, as we gather up more video clips, probably share a little bit more of who said what, and you can see for yourself what was being said at the event, live and in person. So, Laura, I guess we'll move on to kind of current events. I guess we'll have to slug this as the bad news, good news segment, because I know I have 2 items to share, which would go under the heading of bad news, whereas I think you have 2 that would go under the heading of good news. So let me go first, because we want to end strongly, adverbs, Eric, adverbs. Anyhow, did run across an item. I know, of course, we talked about this in a couple of videos, the fact that a lot of the U.S. is in drought. As a matter of fact, I hit you with that. Fun with numbers last week regarding the 6,000 gallons of water that they were trucking from the Missouri River to parts of Kansas and Colorado to help water some of the farmland out there. And we actually found out this week, as of October 27th, USDA says that half of the United States is in drought conditions, and that is the highest percentage seen since 2012. So it's been a decade since we had this many states, this many parts of the United States dealing with drought conditions. So I know that's not going to bode well as we move forward into the spring season, unless we get a really lot of precipitation over the winter. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. And again, hopefully not blizzards, but good amount of snowfall would probably help a great deal of the country. The other bit of news I have to share is from our friends at Purdue University with CME Group. And monthly they put out their Ag Economic Barometer, which kind of measures farmer sentiment going into or looking back at the month we were just in and looking forward. And unfortunately, the barometer dropped 10 points in October, down to a reading of 102. And that they're predicting for November, the futures are also going to be about a 102. And according to the survey, the concerns over interest rates are really weighing heavy on farmers. They're worried about how that's going to impact their farm operations, but they also mentioned the shipping situation. And the direct quote is, additionally, challenging shipping conditions throughout the Mississippi River Valley have hampered exports recently. And the corresponding widespread weakening of corn and soybean basis levels could be contributing to heightened unease about financial performance on the farm. So, so there's my downer news to share, but you get to pick us back up. Please share your good news with us if you don't mind.
Absolutely. It's a treat to be able to share some good news, I'll tell you. So today, the news is pretty dramatic drop in natural gas prices, so much so that European production of fertilizer is restarting again. And we're back at about 63%. Let me make sure I have that back. 63% of total capacity, which is a nice jump from at the beginning of October, when fertilizer output was only at 37% of capacity. So the feeling is great, good news. We should see a drop in fertilizer prices, thankfully. Second bit of good news is last week, I believe, and you mentioned it during Retail Week, that Russia had withdrawn from the pact that allowed Ukraine to export its wheat. Today, they reversed that decision. So Russia's back in on that agreement, thankfully. So another piece of really good news. And I'll keep on looking for more.
All right. Yes, there needs to be some good news out there. So yeah, we balanced pretty nicely. So, well,
Yeah.
I hope you've been paying attention, Laura, because it's time for your favorite segment. Time for fun with numbers.
Woohoo!
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Let's see if you can reverse this trend you've had of getting close but not quite. And again, this week I'll warn you, I did it again. I have three choices that are fairly similar, but if you've been paying attention, hopefully you'll catch on. So your number is 20 billion. Billion
Okay.
with a B. Okay.
All
So
right.
is 20 billion A, is that the estimated economic loss because of decreased shipping on the Mississippi River? Is it B, the estimated economic loss to agriculture because of the US drought? Is it C, the dollar value increase for CropLife 100 companies between 2021 and 2022, which is something I did preview a little bit at PACE Executive Forum? Or is 20 billion D, the amount of money someone offered me if I promised to never again tell a joke on stage at the PACE Executive Forum?
Well, that would have been me, right? Offering you that money. It was
And actually the amount
like
offered to
bidding.
you, the amount actually there was $1. And if they would have offered $5, they would have had me, but $1 was just too much.
Well, hey, I liked your joke, so how can you not smile at those corny jokes of yours? So
Well, what do you think between A, B, and C on the 20 billion? What do you think it represents?
I'm going for B, the drought.
Okay, well, that Barbie Ferrari of yours is just slipping further and further away. No, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Correct
God.
answer is A. That is the estimated economic loss because of decreased shipping of barges on the Mississippi River.
Wow.
According to the USDA, about 92% of the country's ag exports go through that shipping lane. And with not much moving because of the low water levels, it looks like the country and ag is going to take a little bit of a hit. So yeah, to the tune of about 20 billion is the estimate right now.
That's a sizable hit. That was much higher than I thought. So yeah, we'll have to still look for good news then, because it's a hefty number.
Yes, a hefty number indeed. So, but anyhow, so that's about all we have for the viewers this week. So Laura, on behalf of myself and everyone here at CropLife, if you were at the PACE Executive Forum, of course, thank you for joining us. And if you weren't, hope you enjoyed the video clips and look for more in the future. We'll see you again soon. If you have questions or comments about today's episode of Retail Week, contact us by email or Twitter, or type your message in the comment section below. Your feedback is important to us. We will try our best to address your thoughts in next week's episode, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.